All right, everybody. We've got another very special guest for y'all this week. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Snake. Welcome, Snake.
Hello, you're right.
Hey, thanks for being here. The very cool third character person I know named Snake in my life now.
Fourth. We came with four.
Fourth. Oh, four. What were the other three? I don't know.
So it's our buddy Snake here. It's Solid Snake, Liquid Snake, and Snake Plissken.
Oh yeah, Liquid Snake. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah.
The name kind of comes from that. Well, it's always better to have a writing name or something, just because grabs people's attention. If your name is Scott Matthew Watson, yes, all right, but it's going to be forgettable. If your name is Snake, that's a bit different. And I have pseudonyms. I'm a spoken word artist anyway, so I've got my other pseudonyms anyway. And I worked in Nando's for a day.
Okay.
Like doing a trial shift day, like when I was trying to get in some extra money. And there was another Scott. And the other guy was like, well, I'm not going to call you Scott too. What do you want to be called? And I just went, call me Snake.
So
and then I just carried it on. Like my WhatsApp was kind of called Snake for ages. So everyone was like, can I swear? Can I not
yeah, you
swear?
can swear.
Yeah.
Go for it. Oh yeah,
Like, everyone was like, who the fuck is Snake? And I was like, it's me, it's Scott, actually. She called herself that. So it just carried on, and I moved to Manchester, met this girl, and she was like, oh, you should keep doing that, man. You should totally keep doing that. So it just happened and occurred, and I said, yeah.
Well, if she told you to do it, then it had to be the right choice to go, right? That's funny because you mentioned Nando's and Wagamama. Yeah. And I was like, man, these have to be food places that aren't available in the U.S. and they are. So I was like,
I think they are international. Wagamama is like Japanese, man, but I think it must be. It must be in the U.S.
Yeah, I've heard of them. I've never seen them in the Northeast for the U.S. But yeah,
dude, if there's no corn syrup involved, it's not U.S. food. What are you talking about?
If it's not killing us slowly, then they don't they don't feed it to us. Well, I mean, I approve of Snake. So I think it's awesome. And, I'm glad we had you here today. So before we go into talking about the view of the Phoenix trees, let's talk about your origin. I know you do a little bit other, you're a spoken word artist. Yeah. You do some poetry and stuff. But, where did it start for comics and writing that for you?
I can do a poem for you if you want. And it includes everything in that 5 minutes. I can spit some lyrics and throw it out for you.
It would be a first.
It would be a first. Yes. Over 300 episodes, that would be a first. So I would be down for it. Oh hell yeah! We're just here. We're along for the ride. So let's go.
Sure. This one's called A Life in Panels and Pages. I've been into comics since I was a kid. Before this Marvel DC adaptation bullshit hit. Forget film and TV moving images, it's all about the unified synergy of words and pictures. A literary super team-up, creating fictions to rapture imaginations. Through school uniform and black tie work, I've always had my head between pages, forged with the intelligent craftsmanship of artists, writer, creatives. These 24-page coloured bits of paper have shared space with me through the ages, but there are 4 landmark reads that bookmark my life in stages. The first comic I'd like to mention is the dystopian political page-turner Trans-Metropolitan, with a futuristic Hunter S. Thompson as its main character. I brought this comic with me, luckily, on hour-plus long-haul journeys to work as a customer service monkey at a call centre company the other side of the city. Cattle-cramped carriages and commuter silences faded into the background, with my imagination spellbound. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My second selection is the zombie survival saga of The Walking Dead, which swam in my slipstream across 2 different decades as separate reading events. I began reading this comic when my hopes of a film career got dashed, like the blood on the windshield of a car crash, and on the rebound found work in an obscene bar and grill team whose employment stunk like a scorched earth slaughter regime. A neighbouring graveyard gave me garden harmony to sit and read on my tea break, my back sunk against the bark of a maple tree's trunk. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink, they're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next time I picked up The Walking Dead was a million miles from home, in Melbourne, Australia, on a working holiday visa on my own. I was stuck between the termite-crawling walls of a hostel, with new strangers coming and going with the consistency of a brothel. Each room had bodies piled high overhead, so I'd find privacy in pages with the curtains drawn to my bunk bed. Some nights I'd escape on the city's tram lines, comic under my arm, to meet strangers on dates and stay out till dawn's morning would wake. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next comic book is the anti-superhero commentary called The Boys, which occupied a large portion of my young adult life, like background noise. I bought the first $2.99 issue on my first week of university, when the leaves dressed in an autumn-coloured burgundy. For 7 years, each month, this comic kept me company, like the clockwork visits of a separated parent, mindful of custody. Through sandpaper breakups on campus halls, and through hangover wake-up calls on shared house kitchen floors. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My final comic is the fantasy western known as Preacher, whose sunburnt pages encapsulate the perfect story for any reader. I grew up reading this comic on my cousin's acrylic carpet floor after borrowing it from his extensive comic collection drawer. While him and his collective crew would play games of FIFA World Tour, I'd be left in the corner and ignored, a cast-out orphan, but delving deep into this comic's allure. And as I grew older, my love for this comic endured. Reading it became an annual ritual of the tallest order. My usual plan is a Christmas read as the snow paints the land, wearing striped fingerless gloves to warm my hands. Because friends and relationships come and go, but comics have never left me in a park on my own. For a lone ranger like me, prone to isolation necessity, our relationship is a lifelong fixture. I can always curl into a corner with pages between my fingers, to be enveloped in a resplendent world of words and pictures. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. Their panels and pages are synced to the lifeblood coursing through my veins. So we travel in parallel lanes, to the pain and mundane of the day-to-day strains, and journey forward through future gale force, winds and rain, until the end of my life's reign. Thanks, guys.
Wow.
That was awesome.
And that rain was like a double entendre at the end, right? That's, I mean, that. So I'm just kind of speechless because, you know, people ramble like that for a long time and they don't, there isn't any rhyming or any, like, beat to it. So now I think I'm going to have this as a requirement for every guest on the show because
I had to put that in the email moving
that was
forward.
the most entertaining way I've heard. I heard an origin story, and an origin that didn't involve Marvel and DC books.
Hey,
yeah.
There are occasional Marvel DC books I like. I think Thunderbolts, Warren Ellis's Thunderbolts, is fucking insane, is sick as fuck. And, like, people need to make more violent comics where Venom rips off people's arms.
Yeah, exactly. It's Venom. You should be doing that shit, right?
But it doesn't happen a lot, you know? So I like to pick on him a little bit, you know?
When I was getting back into comics, Preacher was the one I had picked up. And
it's the best thing ever, man. It's
I don't know
my
if people
favorite
talk
thing.
about Preacher. Yeah.
It's my favorite thing of everything, of anything. It's the perfect story, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Friendship, relationship, violence.
Violence,
fucking,
yeah.
You know, just like, yeah. And a perfect genre study as well, on so many different genres as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Each volume, yeah, for sure. And just another nod there, you know, you talked about The Boys. And Derek Robertson has been on the show probably 3 or 4 times now. So yeah, it's that's pretty awesome that was one of the books for you too, because that was another one I read at the time. It was just
I'll say all insane. 4 or just
all 4 of them. Yeah,
top 10 at the minimum. In my list.
Walking Dead was huge. Transmet's huge. Yeah. I mean that's awesome.
Did you do that off memory or were you reading something?
So, because I haven't been performing a lot lately, so I know it, but I just have it up just in case.
Okay.
But then if I had been on camera, I probably wouldn't have been reading it so much because I need eye contact and it's all about connecting with audience, so I don't read it as much when I'm on camera because I need to be actually looking at your eyes. So.
And you had the accent, to us, it's an accent, right? It had like the David Attenborough effect of like, man. you need to start doing some voiceovering for just
I
talking
love
about
how you
the history of comics.
like it literally. I love it how like you guys like if there's a British accent involved. Oh my god, you are Wordsworth. Like, you guys are like, oh my god, you are
Yeah,
like
that's
Wordsworth.
it.
Like,
Well, yeah.
and
Dude, I
I'm a
don't know how
common
much.
piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like. Like
I
everyone
don't know
else
how
who wins,
much.
like, oh no, this guy can't do voiceover.
Yeah,
What are you talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. Right.
I don't know how much you know about the states, but we both live in New York,
Mm.
Yeah, sure.
and
Yeah.
we just listen to the people just murder the English language on a daily basis here in
Yeah,
New York,
yeah. It's pretty bad.
ourselves included.
It is funny because I have heard like the differences across England between like Cockney and actually growing up when I was younger we had a local priest in my town, in a really small town in New York, but he went to a school where they trained. I don't know if it was for priests, but they had the same training as like BBC broadcasters, where they speak
Oh,
very,
okay, receive
very
pronunciation and
clear.
stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was like it was a British accent, but it was very clear. And it was like it was almost like it made church really interesting for me because it was like I was watching like BBC broadcasting. Or something. Like that's what
Well,
it, like. Yeah, it was fun.
Do you
for
think
me.
like Doctor Who was coming up next or
Yeah,
something?
right.
And
Yeah,
I bet he actually had a really good commanding voice
he did.
as a
Yeah,
preacher, So it's
yeah.
like with that accent,
Yep.
Yeah, fair
And then he
enough.
left, and I was uninterested. I was like, okay, this isn't fun for me anymore. But this got too serious. But no, I mean, Snake, that's really cool. And you talked about performing. So when you talk about spoken word artists, now
Mhm.
I don't have much experience knowing about these things, but like, is that slam poetry? You just speaking poetry and things you created on stage, stuff like that, performing.
Sure.
Hmm.
I've done some slam poetry. I just come with the piece that I've memorized. For me, it's quite important to have memorized it because it's all fine and well and good, and I respect people who come up onto the stage anyway. But I do think if you're reading from a phone or reading from a book, it deviates from it. It detracts from it. Can't connect with your audience as much. So I go up, I spit some lyrics. I mean, lately I've just been creating comics, to be honest, guys. But I usually used to go to a lot of open mics, but I don't know. I've slowed down a little bit. Like, just yeah, I haven't got any new stuff that I've written recently. So, and
Okay.
just yeah, you go back and forth from your interest. Comics are my thing, but it's
Right.
spoken word is another interest of mine, and rhyme and poetry.
So, I mean, storytelling, right, is something you know well. Then, if these are all the things that are revolving around you. So, let's talk about the view of the Phoenix trees. So, the Kickstarter's out right now.
Yeah.
This is a story that you wrote. Where did this idea come from for this?
Yeah, so yeah, the Kickstarter's out, is live now. It's got a couple of days left. If you can go and try and have a look at it, try and find it. You can just type into Google "View of the Phoenix Trees Kickstarter." You can view it there. It's got lots of rewards and stuff there. And basically, the story is it's based on reality. It's based on my my dad's English, but my mum is Vietnamese Chinese. And it's based on her life and, well, my grandparents' lives. So my grandfather was Chinese, my grandmother was Vietnamese, and they lived through the Vietnam War. They met, had a family, and then after the Vietnam War, China had a falling out with Vietnam. Everyone who was Chinese got kicked out of Vietnam, and vice versa. So they lost a house. They lost like a farm, a temple, kicked out their country, got dumped on a boat with like overcrowded boat with like 70 other people, and were on the ocean for 6 months until they finally stopped in Macau. Were chucked in a refugee prison camp there, and then until finally they sort of settled in the UK. But mind you, my family's all over the world because they settled everywhere. But my grandparents and my mom and stuff, they settled in the UK. So it's kind of about that story, while also telling the Vietnamese creation story about the Dragon King Loc Lan Kwai. And that story kind of parallels my grandparents' narrative. It's like a comparative narrative.
That's not something I'm very familiar with. The Vietnamese myth. If you want to, can you just talk about that for a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've never heard of that before.
Sure. His father was like a mountain god. His mother was a sea dragon.
Mhm.
And like he was one of the early Hung. He's one of the early Hung kings from from like Vietnamese myth and mythology. And basically, he goes on this quest with his like this fairy princess that he meets, and he conquers all these evils and things across the land. And they give birth, and they have children. They give birth to children, but he couldn't stay on the land because he was a water creature, and she wanted to stay on the land, couldn't survive in the water. So they have 100 children. They split the children in half. 50 go and live with him, 50 go and live with her. And those 100 children are basically the beginning of the Vietnamese people. So it's kind of like
Wow.
it's very kind of like, and so my comic, what my comic is, I guess it's taking reference from that, but then also kind of similar to The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. A lot of Sandman in there because Sandman is one of the. Even though I don't include it in my poem, I read it again recently and I was like,
Yeah,
it's even better reading
right.
it now.
That's really good.
Just yeah. So that and yeah, that those are kind of two big influences for me, comics wise.
Well, yeah. I think that's cool that you've kind of taken the personal story and meshed it with this a few other things, but like a mythological tale. And it looks like I'm going through the Kickstarter page here, but I think it looks really interesting. I think the art looks amazing by Hernan Gonzalez. I think that's really cool. Where did you end up meeting up with him?
Yeah, so I've actually got quite a few different artists, but I'll go into
Oh,
that
okay.
in a second.
Yeah.
Because each story is drawn by a different artist.
Okay.
So with Hanan's style, it's very realist. So we've got that kind of element for the kind of true story, the realistic elements of it
Mm.
about my family's history. And then while we're retelling this sort of mythological story, we have Andrew Drillen, who's another artist, and it's a bit more kind of cinematic and a bit more over the top. Um, and I wanted that contrast between the two stories just to bounce off each other, kind of thing. But I met Hanan on Facebook actually. I mean,
Well,
say what you want about Facebook, it is the devil or whatever, but if you use it correctly, it is a really good tool. I connected with so many really awesome, interesting artists. Like a lot of my artists, like are Venezuelan and stuff. Like you never
yep.
normally be able to meet them, unless you go to Comic Cons or festivals or whatever. But here I can just do it from my room. And
Hmm.
then Andrew Drillen and the other artist, he was connected to me by my publisher. So yeah.
Okay.
And then and then we also have like a colorist as well, Damien Lefferty, who does the colors for it.
Yeah, I think the interiors that you have on the Kickstarter page are amazing. Like the realism of those panels.
Yeah,
Um,
the Hanan stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a cool thing.
it, and the color choice too, like the very minimal colors and like the red lipstick and stuff really just pops out on the page. It looks awesome.
Because what we kind of wanted to do with the color palette was like add primaries there, so you got lots of blacks, lots of
Hmm.
reds, and then
Hmm.
kind of golds in there as well, and then kept that kind of ongoing, and then it just fluctuates and changes slightly, but yeah.
It's awesome. No, it looks epic.
Yeah, and I love the pinups too that kind of showcase the Dragon King story that you were talking about. The three pinups you see after the interior art.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just once again, publisher managed to get some really good artists,
Hmm.
some sort of guest artists. So done that. I've been messing with them today, to be honest. Just the pages again, and I got some pages from Andrew. So just been messing around with them all day, really, just waiting for this interview, which is awesome. It got me in the mood to talk
yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's really cool, like a mesh of like this mythological art, and then it's almost like a noir style. And that there's the variant cover B you have, which definitely reminds me of like a cover you would see at the Boys.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, by
I think it,
Jimbo Salgado. It
yeah.
reminds me of like a Derek Robertson cover for sure. It's very cool. I think it's a great idea, and we could talk about where the Kickstarter's at. You're above the goal of 750, very small goal, but there's still going to be about a week to go with everybody listening today. But there seems to be some extra stuff that you're talking about here. There's some stretch goals you have listed, right? So there's a sticker bundle, there's prints. Do you want to talk about any of that stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we've already reached our goal, so we can finish off issue one. That's fine.
Yep.
But then obviously just trying to raise as much as possible, so then we can sort of start on issue two. It's a 4 issue miniseries, that's why.
Mhm.
And yeah, just my publisher thought he'd keep it low, just so we could make sure we get enough for issue one, and then just like as I said, we just stretch some certain goals. But yeah, various prints, additional prints. We were thinking about doing signed copies of the comic as well, but it's just kind of impossible when I live in the UK and my publisher's in the US, and it's just like I don't know if anyone comes to any Comic Cons in the UK, I will totally be up for signing stuff. Don't worry.
Yeah, the shipping alone will get
Yeah.
into your budget so much.
Yeah. So
yeah.
but it's kind of nice. It's been nice to actually have a publisher sorting that out, because I tried before. I don't know. Just my brain doesn't work that way, man. I mean,
Right.
I know a lot more now about Kickstarters and how to run them, but that's because I've been watching and like learning and looking at my publisher. And I mean, we all got into this business. I mean, I'm sure most people who are into comics got into it to tell stories and be creative. They didn't tell it to be, a businessman and an advertising man.
Mhm.
Right.
It, and for some of us, it's easier to go in, to flex that muscle and to work that muscle and to tone it up and to strengthen it. And for others, it's just like, this is another language.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey, I would say, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I also, with this as well, what we also have as well is I've also got a composer, John Piper, to compose a soundtrack for it. So there's a
Oh, that's
link.
awesome.
There's going to be a link on the comic just to get you into the mood and flavor of the comic, because some of the best reads I've ever had of putting on some of my favorite music on, and it's worked in like a symbiotic relationship with the story. And so I just think it really throws you into the story, and you become, you really submerge yourself in the storytelling with the soundtrack. So I've added that in, and
It's really
hopefully
cool.
do some more soundtracks for each issue as well.
I do
That's
like
cool.
that. Yeah.
I've heard of like Spotify playlists. I never heard of someone
Yeah.
hiring a composer to do.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, there is.
I,
So it's not like a new idea. Totally not a new idea. Like there's a really interesting artist, Mento. He's like he's IDW. Do you know what I mean? So you get the vibe already. It's horror based. It's very Ashley Wood, but there's this guy called Mento. He's got a massive beard and he's a really interesting artist. But on some of his comics, because he's a composer, I think as well, he just composed music for it. So I was like, okay. So I just kind of took that idea and thought it'd be a really interesting idea.
It's really cool. I
oh,
think
that's why I thought it sounded familiar, the name, and I must be thinking of the Doom Patrol character Minto.
Yep.
I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting on the page as I'm going through like the different tiers, and I always look for like the stuff that nobody else does, or at least I haven't seen anybody else do, I should say. And there's two in here that I thought were very interesting. One, which goes along with how we started this interview, but the custom poetry tier,
Yeah.
where you're gonna do a custom spoken word poem for the backer.
That's really cool.
That's very interesting. And then the other one is the custom cover, where you're gonna get a 1-for-1 cover that you can design. Were those your idea, or was that like the publisher really thinking it was something cool to do?
Both. So publisher with the print where you can pay the artist, any of the guest artists, to do a picture. Because I think he was just chatting to them and like he just came up with the idea. I thought it was a really cool idea. And the spoken word poem's my one. Yeah, just it's someone asked me in another interview, it was like, what would be your advice for creating comics? And I would say, use what you know, use what you have. And so what I have is I got really into comics when I moved to Melbourne and lived in Melbourne for a bit of time in Australia. And I don't want to make money from my spoken word. It's just a thing I enjoy doing. I enjoy words, but it was one of the things I could bring to the table. And anyone who out there who wants me to write them a poem, give me 2 weeks. Give me a topic, subject, whatever you want. Can be as stupid, can be as dirty, can be whatever you want. I don't mind, whatever. And I'll write a poem for you in 2 weeks. It's just fun for me to play with words. So why not raise money? I thought, because yeah. Oh, and then I'll perform it as well for you guys as well.
It's a great idea.
It is, and a lot of really cool variant covers, as Mike was kind of pointing out.
Yeah.
throughout it, including some. Did I see a shiny foil cover, Mike? I
Yeah,
did.
you do.
I do see a
I'm a
shiny
sucker for
metal one.
those foil covers. I think that's really cool when you do the metal or the foil covers. I think that that's a really cool treatment for the books
Yeah,
on the front
as
page.
soon as a publisher like suggested it, I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be so
Yeah.
awesome. Um, I haven't. I mean, I think I've got some at home, but like none where I live now. But I have got some hidden away that I bought years ago, and I'm like, oh, these are them are babies, you know.
Yeah. They were big in the 90s. You couldn't stop
Hmm.
finding them everywhere.
Hmm.
So you talked about it being 4 issues. So you have a plan, you have it all drawn out, right, or written
Hmm.
out at least. So this will be the first issue, and if all goes well, then you'll, talk about issue 2 next, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've earned a little bit more money than than the goal, so that
Okay.
will go towards issue two. But yeah, basically just looking to raise as much money as we can, so we can do as many issues as possible. We run out of money, we'll just do another Kickstarter and start another Kickstarter. I mean, I think my publisher's kind of interested in just doing a Kickstarter for each issue, basically. But hopefully just building that well of people, I guess. It's
Right.
been kind of interesting actually running a Kickstarter because I don't normally advertise that much on my Instagram profile. I'm not really a social media person, but I've just gone a bit manic and a bit crazy, and I've got so many more followers now because of it.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
great.
Mhm.
already an audience, for
Right.
the comic later on. I mean, I know like smart people with Kickstarter would build that audience already and have that there, and then they just contact them for the comic. I mean, I don't really have that in the minute, but hopefully next time,
Uh,
hopefully that'll be in place.
our experience, talking with a lot of creators in the Kickstarter is you'll have more and more people signing on each um, event, and I
Yeah.
think or project. But you
Mm.
get a foundation, those people will come back, and then a few more people each time. So that's good to see that already starting for you, especially because it's so hard to get more and more people to see you with all the algorithms and shit that are out there. It's like to get people to start following you as a feat in itself. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
It was quite
yeah.
surprising as well, to be honest, because like not only people I didn't know, but there was people from my past. But
Mm,
I just went through the whole of my Facebook and just sent personal messages to like everyone,
that's
and
cool.
like I didn't expect anyone to come back to me, or like I expected my main friends to. Do you know what I mean? But like
Yeah,
not
right.
random people from 10 years ago, but random
Yeah.
people from 10 years ago did message me and
Oh,
did like back, and I was like, oh, thank you so much, guys. I was really
that's so
surprised.
cool.
So
That's
as well as raising money, it was like me connecting with all these random people from my past. It was quite crazy.
yeah. And I mean, it's a story that deals with your history and your past as well. So that's pretty cool. That it all comes together like that. So I mean, we'll talk about where to send our listeners and stuff. But I think before we wrap up today, do you want to? Is there anything else you want to tell the viewers or listeners specifically about the project? Before we take off today.
I guess one of the more interesting things in terms of like postmodernism in that way
Mm,
is that it's obviously the story is based on historical fact. So there's that element of it, and that's drawn in a specific way. But then you've also got this other part of it, which is completely fictional and dealing with mythology. But also, if you look at the realist elements, so everything that happens in it is pretty much true. However, I don't really know my family that well. I never spoke to my grandfather because my grandfather's the main character in it, but I never spoke to him because he speaks Vietnamese, I speak Chinese. So
oh, okay.
it was a
Wow.
very
Yeah.
interesting kind of thing of coming at it from with all these events, but then me having to use my writerness, my having to use
Right.
my creativity, having to use imagination to kind of
Hmm.
fill these characters with a personality, with shaping them. So I just find that very interesting. So as well as me saying it's based on reality and stuff like that, I do actually have to hold up a thing of saying it's it takes creative license because I mean also there's five siblings in it, okay, but my mom has 20 siblings. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
like, because
That's insane.
well, because how can I put 20 characters, 20,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, in four
Right.
four issues of a comic? So there's just
Right.
things I had to do to just change it. So I think people will find the lines between reality and fiction quite interesting reading the comic.
But the fact to go from 5 siblings to 20 is like that's the fact part. It's like,
Yeah.
understandably so. You can't. Yeah, one issue out of 4, you can't fit 20 extra side characters. Besides a splash page or the picture of them, and that's it. Like, that is actually crazy.
Most like historical movies or like bio movies, they take a lot of like the story is more important than the actual like hard facts, and you don't like do something crazy like I don't know. I'm not gonna give an example because something's coming off the top of my head, but you don't do something super crazy with it. But you do take liberties and try to just make the story flow better with those liberties.
Because I'm not a historian. What I am is I'm a
if
storyteller.
you're writing a biography, that's a different story.
Yeah, right.
I'm a storyteller. I mean, the one thing I hold up all the time is like what they changed in Dallas Buyers Club. If the main character Ron Woodrow was a gay man, it wouldn't be as interesting. But it's far more interesting when he's a redneck homophobe who then becomes part of that community and mellows and embraces that community. I understand why people were annoyed because it's representation and stuff like that. Yeah, totally get it. But from a story perspective, it's genius. It's good writing because it's conflict. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say with the story as well. With that, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know I'm looking forward to it. It sounds really exciting, and for everybody out there, you'll have about a week to go on Kickstarter, look up the View of the Phoenix Trees, and check it out. Snake, you talked about your Instagram a little bit. Do you want to, send our listeners or viewers to a specific social media to follow you at or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So it's just Snake87 SMW. I can put it in the chat or whatever, or on your details or whatever as well.
Yeah, and to everybody out there, you can find not only the link to the Kickstarter page in the show notes down below, but also Snake's Instagram handle as well. So if you forget it while we're talking here or through the rest of the show, you can always just go down there and click on it and find it yourself. So Snake, thanks so much for stopping by and chatting with us today. It's been really cool talking with you, and we look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, no problem, guys. My pleasure, absolutely. It was awesome.